working for you. A weekly talk radio program which highlights developments of national interest and the activities of your St. Kitts Nevis government. Join host Roy Williams as he presents news, views, reports, and interviews about everything regarding the activities of the Team Unity government and the building of our communities and the development of St. Kitts Nevis. Tune in and call in to interact with your government and share your views regarding the upward forward development of your community and our beautiful Twin Island Federation. Working for you is weekly, every Wednesday live from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. on ZIZ Radio, Win FM, and Sugar City FM with rebroadcast on participating stations. Working for you.
Good afternoon and welcome to Working for You. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's program. We appreciate your company very much. And we thank God that we were spared the brunt of Tropical Storm Dorian. And of course, we pray for our Caribbean neighbors who are in its path. And we also thank God for those other Caribbean islands that were spared the full hit from Tropical Storm Dorian. Today we are going to be talking about probation and child protection services. And I have with me in the studio Mr. Gerald Connor, who is the acting director of the Department of Probation and Child Protection Services. Mr. Connor, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, Mr. Williams.
I think it's your inaugural appearance on this program.
Yes,
you're very welcome.
Thank you very much.
And I know it won't be your last time. Okay, of course we know that our children are our precious resource. And they must be cared for, they must be protected, they must be provided for. However, we live in a world today where that is not always the case. Children are abused emotionally, physically, sexually. Children are neglected. Children are not provided for with the basic necessities of life, food, water, clothing, and so on. Some are in slavery. There's trafficking of children. Some are sold into the sex trade. Some are raped. And all of this sort of disgraceful type of behavior. And sometimes it doesn't come from strangers. It comes from people of trust. Our teachers, our pastors, and parents who are supposed to provide that support and care and protection for children are sometimes the one who abuse their own children. And so today we are going to be talking about children, protecting children, and so on. And who better than Mr. Connor, the Director of the Probation and Child Protection Services, to engage in this discussion. Mr. Connor, when we speak about a child, how do we define it?
When we look at what is outlined in the legislation, a child is someone who is basically under the age of 10. And upwards, you have up to the age of 18, which you will classify as juveniles and such forth. So until you're 18 years of age, you are still under the care and protection of your parents or guardian. So that is the age range of which we look at when we classify someone who is a child.
Right. So and that That is also according to international conventions.
International convention, international standards.
Right.
One of the things that we try to make sure that we keep in line with is the Convention of the Rights of the Child and other international standards that is laid out by the UN.
So St. Kitts is signatory
Two.
to
Yes.
the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which
yes.
states that you are a child up until the age of 18.
18 years of age.
18 years of
Yes.
age. However, there are some disparities in our society. Of course, we say that the legal age for sexual consent is age 16.
16.
However, we're saying that at 16 years old, you are still a child. Well, children are not supposed to be involved in sexual activity.
Yes. That is one of the big issues and challenges that we are faced with, especially when it comes around to men who have to pay their maintenance. They have to pay until the child is 18 years of age. And also if the child goes on to a tertiary education, and once that is proven, then the maintenance have to continue. A lot of things, questions are being asked about raising the age of sexual consent to keep in line with. But if the thing about it is that saying it's actually have one of the highest age of sexual consent within the world, within the region. I know in some countries is actually 14 and 15, and we have the highest range of consent. But I could recall a couple of years ago there was a reading in Parliament to actually get the age of consent moved to 18 to keep in line with the standard of being responsible under your parent or guardian up until you're 18.
Right. So there needs to be some realignment
of laws.
so that everything can be seen as in unison.
Yes.
You can't say that you're 16 years old, you can have sex, and at the very same time you're still a child.
You're still a child.
You know, and at the very same thing goes in terms of, alcohol. I think you can only drink alcohol at the age of 18.
At the age of 18.
In some countries, of course, it's 21.
It's 21. As such as in the United States, it's 21, and other countries it's 21, and that is something that we really need to start looking into when it comes around to law reform and keeping in ahead of international standards. Of course, it's always good to have an international standard, but when a country can make these decisions and move ahead in the framework of keeping things in alignment when it comes around to protection and other laws, it is a very good saying that you're leading the pack going forward.
Right. And you mentioned, of course, Mr. Connor, that in terms of 16, that's very high in terms of comparison with some countries, because in some places you have children that are being married.
Yes,
at 14 years old, child marriages.
Children marriages and stuff like that. We have never experienced such in St. Kitts based upon different religions that are here. I can never recall knowing of such, because as you can see, we have an influx of different cultures and religions that is presently in the region and in St. Kitts in particular, and they bring their own culture and different religious belief, and of course the law of the land always supersedes such. But as we can see nowadays, that persons are fighting for their own religious belief within different laws within different countries. So you find that things have to continue in a particular pace in order to understand that we as a society need to move forward as it relates to law reform when it comes around to these things.
A lot of our laws are based on divine commands. So
Yes.
the divine commands in terms of ethics and so on.
Ethics,
and
values.
and we're predominantly a Christian
Christian society.
A Christian society, and a lot of our laws are based on Christianity. And what Europe, of course, brought it to us.
The
The Europeans But at the very same time, you mentioned something that is very important, that we are a society that is changing.
Yes.
We are a society that is becoming more pluralistic.
Yes.
And so therefore we have different religions among us and that sort of a thing. But that's a different conversation for a different day.
Time.
But Mr. Connor, what are some of the legislations that give direction to child protection and juveniles who are in conflict with the law?
Okay, in our department, Probation and Child Protection Services, we have two different units. We have the probation unit and we have the child protection unit. The probation unit basically deals with children who are in conflict with the law, children who are deemed beyond care and control or at risk youths. We work along closely with the Special Victims Unit. We work along closely with different agencies that are out there, especially the court system that deals with these juveniles who are in conflict with the law. And the legislation that really gives us our power as it relates to probation officers is really the Child Justice Act of 2013, which basically saw the repeal of the Juvenile Act. So since 2013, we have had a new act that gives a mandate to the probation officers as regards to dealing with juveniles in conflict with the law and so forth, and how the process should be when they are in conflict with the law. You have the diversion aspect of it and you have the prosecution aspect of it. The diversion aspect is basically outlines in the act where you have the Child Justice Committee, which is a committee that falls within that legislation that deals with juveniles who are in conflict with the law, but the crime is of such that they can be diverted instead of going through the court process. For example, a child throw a stone and break someone's window. Instead of putting that child through the entire court process, once the child have admitted that they have done something wrong and willing to compensate or to restitution, then the Child Justice Committee can deal with that aspect of it. But if the child does not basically take responsibility for such, then the matter can proceed through a trial, and then we are still a part of that process going through. Then we have the child protection officers, which falls within the Children Care and Adoption Act of 2013, and then you have the Probation and Child Welfare Board, which is basically a creature of that act and basically carries out it covers the entire department itself. It's a board that basically is mandated to ensure that things are kept up to breast as it relates to child protection and children in conflict with the law. So those are some of the legislation that basically gives us our powers.
Okay. Now, there has always been a concern because, you cannot place children in an adult correctional facility or prison system. And basically, sometimes when you don't have the space or you don't have a facility where you can keep juveniles, children, it becomes a problem. Because you can't have children living among hardened criminals. The influences.
Yes. Everyone, of course, knows about the New Horizon Rehabilitative Center, which is over at Harris's. That was built early in the mid. I believe it was in
before that. They used to have the Harris's home.
Yes. What New Horizon is designed for is children who are in conflict with the law, of course. Children who have been remanded for certain offenses that deems that they need to be put in a facility of such. But the law is detailed in such a way that based upon the nature of the offense that have been committed. And once it can be proven that at the time that the offense was committed, the juvenile had the mental capacity to understand that what they did was of such a grave nature, they can remain in police custody. And once accommodations can be provided for them at a particular facility, they can go to that facility outside of New Horizons.
Okay. Right. Now, we're speaking about children getting caught up with the law and breaking the law. And on one hand, there are questions that arise in terms of what kind of atmosphere, what kind of climate, what kind of socialization in the home has that child had. So we have institutions, we have the home, we have the church,
Yes.
we have the schools, and so on. We have agents of primary socialization,
Yes.
which is the home, and then you have the secondary. Agents of socialization, the schools and the churches and youth groups and other organizations that are responsible for helping our young people to integrate holistically into the society. And when you see children start to behave in a particular way, running afoul of the law, then you ask yourself, who really is to be blamed?
And that is a very good point that you just brought up, because we have seen a lot of broken families, a lot of broken homes. Children are not properly socialized, even as young as preschoolers and even daycare. And one of the things that we always say is that even when a mother is at the hospital giving birth, based upon what you might see or what you might observe, it can tell you what to expect coming out of that home and the socialization and development of that child. And that is why it is so very important that the early childhood, the Ministry of Education and the department work closely together and of course the Ministry of Health, to recognize these issues at an early stage and start working with these families to get them to the point that they can properly integrate their children into society. Nowadays you don't see much children or even families or parents going to church, and that was one of our bedrock that was one of our bedrock when it comes around to such. I could remember that I had to go to church with my great grandmother, and that was one of the things that molded me into following a particular pathway. And a lot of parents tend to throw their hands up in the air at the early stage, and you find a lot of matters are reported to our department on an annual basis. Just to call some of the statistics here, I believe last year we had about 278 cases that was reported to us, and the year before we had 264. Presently we have 153 matters that have been reported to us.
These are juveniles who are in conflict with the law?
In conflict with the law, abuse and all of that. So you can see that where we're at, we have a very, very serious overload of reported cases that are coming in. And it can tell you that from these statistics, it is very alarming, and it is very troubling that we have so many cases that are being reported to the department. And it is not really much of a bad thing, but at least they're being reported, and we can try to intervene in these matters at a very, sometimes it is at a late moment, that really and truly we can only try our best to see what interventions we can put into these situations. But we realize that there's a lot of broken homes within our society, too many conflicts between parents that end up spill over into the lives of these children. and cause them to react in a particular way and become withdrawn from their parents. One of the things that we look at is street children. What defines street children? A street child don't have to be a child that is homeless or don't have parents or anything. A street child is someone who spends majority of their hours outside of the home and not doing something constructive such as school and other forms of building and character building activities. And we find that a lot of children are out there that are just left unto themselves to raise themselves. And that is one of the biggest problems that we are seeing as we go about our investigation into a lot of these matters.
You know, in a certain sense, they're not raising themselves. You know, I'll tell you something. The TV is raising them. The internet is raising them. The music is raising them. All these influences. Are raising them.
Yes.
What the problem is that you will always have influences.
Yes.
But we can talk about different kinds of influences. And at the very same time, we have to talk about the role of the parent in terms of guiding their children.
Yes. And that is one of the biggest problems that we're having. A lot of parents are quick to say, I cannot deal with this anymore, and just leave it at the hands of the department. Parents need to understand we are not taking up your responsibility. Our department is basically to help you get back your responsibility and get you back in charge of your household.
I am sure that a lot of these young people that, you know, run afoul of the law are young people, children who are misguided.
Yes. Misguided because one of the key terms that I love to look at is the terminology of latchkey kids. Basically, it derived from the fact of children who have their own key to go into their home. The parents leave to go to work early. They are left to basically get themselves ready for school and get to school. Between their parent being out of the home to they get into school, if they do reach to school, there are many influences that happens along the way. And even within the school system, there are many influences that are negative that gets into the way. And between the ending of school to their parents getting back home from work, which most likely she's coming back home about after 5 in the afternoon, there are a lot of negative influences that child can be drawn into. And you will find a lot of these parents do not even go to PTA meetings.
Mm-hmm.
So some of them don't even know if their child have been late or absent how many times and such. And these are things, these are reality, because sometimes even when we investigate matters, we find that a child have been absent from school for over a long period of time, and you want to know, well, at what point in time would the parent would have realized this situation?
But the child leaves home destined for school, no? But never arrives. Never arrives at school.
Yes.
But if the parent was actively engaged
Yes.
in that child's life, the parent would realize something.
Something is amiss.
Do you check their book, their notebook? Do you ask them if they have any homework?
Do you speak to a teacher?
Do you speak to a teacher? Do you go to the Parent Teachers Association meeting and so on?
And these are very important. These are very important because parents need to remember that we live in a stage where things develop quickly and children are more open-minded to technology and all of that, and that is one of the things that allows them to maneuver around their parents, who are not so technological sound. And it's always very important because some parents will tell you, oh, I can't handle laptop, I can't handle this, I can't handle that. But it's for you to understand those things to keep up with what your children are doing. Otherwise, they're going to run circles around you.
Yes.
And when you're going to be in denial, when reality starts to hit, and that is when now you have to end up go across the square and pay lawyer fees of a considerable amount in order to get your child out of
You know,
trouble.
and that is the thing again. How do you supervise children in terms of their use of technology? Because the technology in itself is not bad.
Yes,
But of course, it has its dark
we
side.
have his that side.
And so, therefore, a lot of it has to do with supervision. But how do you supervise the technology? You have a child that has his or her own room.
Yes,
They have access to the internet in their room. They have their laptops. They have their cell phones. You know, you don't know
What they're
what that
doing.
child is doing. I know that, you know, nowadays they have, you know, on your TV, you can have parental control and so on. But who really pays attention to that?
exactly, and that is why it's so important to have a very good relationship with your children. Very, very good relationship. You'll find a lot of reason why a lot of children end up leaning towards other individuals is because of the lack of a relationship, lack of understanding, and between them and their parents. As I said earlier, conflicts within the home between parents cause these issues to come about, and children turn to other things for the attention.
For example, gangs, the
Gangs,
formation of gangs.
And I believe it just recently it was disclosed that gang members as young as 10 years old. So we these are things that parents need to really pay attention to.
Yeah, they start to learn all these gang signs and they learn what the colors are for. And they start, you see it at a very young
At
age.
a very, very young age. And what I realize is that, you know, at a very young age, when children start to do certain things, a lot of parents see it as being cute.
Yeah.
Oh, he's cute, he could sing this song, and you ain't see how she does dance and this, and these are things that they deem as cute. But,
yeah.
but
And children being involved in adult behavior and basically adults laughing.
laughing at it.
I have seen children, they have them walking up, as we just say, walking up on one another. Adult behavior, and they're laughing, and is that something really to laugh about?
And it should not be. And it goes to show the kind of society that we have. It was even just the other day when I started looking at the amount of adult activities that they have on a weekly basis compared to the wholesome activities that are out there for children to go and enjoy. They're basically none. They're basically none. You don't have a nice place where you could go with your child and relax and have they basically no. Well, I know they have the children park.
Yes.
Of course, they have the children park, and I believe they have another ocean activity over on the peninsula. But when it comes around to having children be available, having space that is available for them to go and go wholesomely.
And you're making a very good point, because I know in some of the developed countries and so on, you can't go to certain places unless you're of a certain age.
Yes.
And so therefore you have adult spaces.
Adult spaces.
Where people can go. But here what you find, and what I find, is that you have children and adults mingling in the same place all the time.
Yeah. And that is a very, very, very serious problem. And I'm glad that you came to that, because a lot of things boil down also to enforcement. Enforcement is something that we need to really, really take serious in this country. Enforcement of age restrictions, age limits, of course, and even presenting IDs when persons are going into different function. As they were saying in the US, persons being carded, your face look young.
Yeah, where
Let me
alcohol is
see.
being sold,
Yes.
and all kind of adult behavior is taking place.
Because I think that those are things that we need to really start to be enforced in order to start getting a handle on a lot of these situations. I was just looking at a documentary just last night as it relates to Norway, who had a big issue, and one of the things that they did was start to enforce a lot of laws that deal with children of a particular age. For example, we have the the Criminal Law Amendment Act, which basically states that children of school-going age should not be out after 10 in the night. And that is something that we need to really start to enforce. School-going age is basically anyone under the age of 16. And those are things that we really not need to start to enforce. And enforce it to the extent that we start putting the pressure on parents to start being more of supervising the children activities.
Yeah,
because sometimes you go around and you see children out on the street at all hours of the night.
Yeah, and then when we have these fetes, wet fet and cooler fet and all kind of thing, 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, even sometimes younger than that, what are they doing there till 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning? We have to ask ourselves what kind of society we are.
Yes, and that is something that we really, really need to take serious. And parents really need to start being parents. That is one of the issues. As I said, parents have a tendency of throwing their hands up and say, hey, I can't do this anymore. But you are a parent. You brought that child into this world, and you should make up your mind that at the end of the day, that you must do everything possible to guide that child down a wholesome path. Yes, you come to the department, you make a report, you ask for assistance, but it is not our role to step into your home and take control of your home. We put things in place, we assist you, we guide you, and we provide different
Okay, good.
things for you to get back into a position where you can then take command.
So you're now talking about role.
Yes.
So my question to you now is, you have a department,
Yes.
Probation and Child Protection Service. What is the job? What is the role of a child protection officer? And what is the role of a probation officer? Because I think people need to know.
Yes. The role of a child protection officer is basically someone who investigates reported matter of child abuse and neglect, and suspected cases, of course, of child abuse and neglect. We do not investigate criminal offenses. That is one of the things that we need to make sure that people understand. We do not investigate the criminal aspect of these offenses. That is why we work closely with Special Victims Unit, who are the police who investigate pending or matters of criminal intent that might be coming out of these situations. As a child protection officer, we get the report and we do an investigation. Our job, as long as we realize that this home is not conducive for that child, our job is to then get that child to a place of safety. Our job is not to break up families. Our job is to make sure that families become stable and wholesome for the return of that child. Reintegration is something that we always look at, and we try our best to work with the parents of those children and family members to bring the home back to a stable environment for the return of that child. Also, we have the child protection officers. Also, we have an foster program also. So we have about 60-something foster homes that are available, and we actually have about 60-something foster children presently. And the child protection officers work along with these foster parents as they tend to assist where needs be when we have to remove a child from a particular home or environment. So that is the role and function of the child protection officers, to investigate all these matters, and whatever information we have that we realize that can lead to criminal charges or whatever, we forward it on to Special Victims Unit for them to investigate that aspect, and we work along with them to get that done. In relation to probation,
So someone has to file a report.
someone has
That is
to
where
file
it
a
all
report.
starts.
That is where it all
It's
starts.
either somebody within the home or someone outside of the home. And then you go and then you do your investigation.
And then
It could be that that child is abused.
is abuse.
To violence. It could be sexually abused.
Different all forms of abuse, and sometimes even matters are reported to the police that then are sent to us for us to
And
investigate and
neglect.
stuff like that. So we work closely when it comes around to investigating all matters that are reported or that we get to know of. So that is what the child protection officers do. That is what that unit in particular does. And then you have the probation officers who basically deals with children who are juveniles who are in conflict with the law, children who are deemed to be, going down the wrong path and stuff like that. So that is what we do. We work also with the with persons who are placed on probation. We do social inquiry reports. Basically, that is something which is part of the pre-sentencing for persons who have been convicted for an offense. And it's quite funny because we do not just deal with juveniles, we also deal with adult offenders within the High Court.
Yes.
So we do reports for pre-sentencing, also for adult offenders, from cases coming right down from manslaughter, murder, manslaughter, all of that.
So you're responsible for doing those social inquiry reports?
Yes, that is what we do, which is basically investigating the person's life,
Social circumstances.
social circumstances, their background, speaking to persons who they know, their parents, their friends, their family, and we do a complete assessment of such. And in some cases, we will make recommendation for their sentencing. Once guided as such.
Right.
So that is what we basically do. So we do determine what is the best courses of rehabilitation for some persons, and we do provide resources such as get them into jobs, make sure that they attend school on a regular, make sure they attend classes and all of that stuff. So that is what we try to do, and also recommend counseling for them also. So we look for services that they can be filtered into in relation to their rehabilitation.
Once ago we used to hear it takes a village to raise a child.
Yes.
But nowadays the saying is different. Everybody minding their own business.
Everybody minding their own business.
Everybody minding their business. So, is your child? I have nothing to do with it. And in fact, nowadays sometimes if you try to correct somebody else's child, they're coming at you.
They're coming at you.
Leave my child alone.
I recall.
Get your own.
I recall years ago when being a young teacher at Sandy Point High School. Those are some of the challenges where I could recall that parents used to come to the school, come looking for teachers who would discipline their children and stuff like that. And I when I was a student, if I was punished, I couldn't even go home and tell my grandmother that, because that's who I grew up with. But
Right.
I couldn't even go home and tell my grandmother, hey, I was punished at school. But as society changed, as new laws and stuff like that, one of the things that I believe that we have taken as a wrong concept is the rights of the child, because with the
Yes.
rights of the child, children also have responsibilities.
Yes.
And
Both
chi-
go
and,
together.
and they need to be reminded of such. Their parents need to remind them of such. And a lot of parents like to say, oh, if I beat my child, welfare gonna come for me. It is not generally like that, but people need to understand that there is always a thin line between punishment and abuse. And if you raise your child in a particular way, having to punish a child physically would end up being your last resort.
Yes, but you know what, Mr. Connor? There are some parents today who will tell you, you're a child, you have no rights. You have no rights. As long as I feeding you, as long as I clothing you, as long as I giving you something to drink and sheltering you, you have no rights.
But those are the rights.
You rights.
But those are the rights.
Those are the rights, and they have a right to those things. But what they mean is that you can't offer a counter opinion, or you can't counteract something they say because you're under their roof. And if you ain't going to agree with it, go down here. Our parents love to do that.
Yes.
Go down here. When you start to walk and whatever you can, and you say, but apart from, go out in here. And we like to tell our children, parents like to tell
Yes.
their children, go time
Go
here.
down here. And,
Go time here.
and that is the whole thing about having a good relationship with your children. If you have a good relationship with your child from the jump, it would not reach to that point. Yes, as children grow, they get their own mind, they get their own understanding of things. They go to school, they're taught certain values and traits and stuff like that. And sometimes the opinion might not be the same as what their parent might view it as, and they would have a counter opinion, as you say. And parents sometimes need to take a chance and listen to those opinions instead of just jumping and saying, get out of in here, and have a discussion.
Yeah, but I'll tell you something. You have 13-year-olds and 14-year-olds who are more mature than their fathers and mothers. And I am serious about
Yeah.
that. They are not at a level where they are as mature as their child.
Because
Even in terms of the level of thinking, and the level of education and the ability to reason, they are not there.
and that's the
And sometimes that poses a conflict. Once ago we used to hear about, well, nowadays you're hearing about parenting classes and all of that sort of a thing, but some people say, well, why do I have to go to a class to be a parent? You know, my
Yes.
mother didn't go to any class to be any parent. But really and truly, there are some things that we have to learn. Because you're dealing with another human being
yes.
who also has rights and responsibilities, just like yourself.
And I always say that no one is born with a manual. And if we as adults cannot get it right, how do you expect a young child to get it right?
We are born tabula rasa. Things have to be written on the
There you
thing,
go.
you know?
And that is one of the things that we need to understand. That even though it's your child, they would have different opinions and different understanding of things.
Each human being is unique,
Yes.
you know?
Because they're exposed to different things. The literacy is more advanced than once ago.
Their literacy is more advanced and so on. And nowadays we have this thing, Mr. Connor, with gender equality and all of that affect the homes as well. Because sometimes the way that boys are socialized and girls are socialized is totally different. And then sometimes if you have a family where you have a child, and there's a lot of that, you know, when I was in Jamaica, you would see that. If that child has is leaning towards being gay or lesbian or whatever that case is, the parents basically throw them out.
And that is one of the biggest issues, that you have to understand in this day and age, things changed, society evolved. Even when you look at it presently, you'll find in different societies, you'll find they have male nurses. Presently,
There's a stigma,
Present-
and we have to eradicate the
there you go.
stigma.
I'm presently, even in our society here, you would not find a male who is going into the social sciences subjects. One of the biggest issues is actually finding male officers in our field.
Right.
Because if I'm correct, I am practically the only male in Zengis who have an undergraduate degree in social work. I believe Mr. Hanley, Jeffrey Hanley, Dr. Hanley have a
Yes.
master's in social work.
Yes.
But I believe I'm the only one who have an undergraduate degree in social work. And you do not find a lot of men coming into this field. And this is a field that is very important and need a lot of male figures in these areas in order to guide a lot of our males down the right path.
Right. And you know, I bring that up because the United Nations brought out what we call the Sustainable Development Goals.
Yes.
And a lot of them pertain basically to children. For example, no poverty. And we have a lot of child poverty
Yes.
in the world
In the world.
that is affecting children. Children not being able to go to school. Children don't have the basic necessities of life. It's affecting them.
Is affecting them.
Zero hunger. you know, good health and well-being, eradicating disease and immunization of children. The other day we heard in the U.S. that there was a religious group who was not immunized,
Immunizing
their children, and so you had a problem now. Pause for a community in terms of measles and
Yes.
all of that sort of thing.
And which had a measles outbreak just recently.
And then a quality education. Children must be exposed to a quality education. Globally, and this is what UNICEF said,
Yeah.
that 264 million children and adolescents do not have the opportunity to enter or complete school.
One of the fortunate things that we have
And sometimes in some places, girls
are not allowed to
are allowed to go to school.
And that's one of the fortunate things that we have here in St. Kitts, that we are able to provide free schooling even up to the CFBC. I know in some countries such as Jamaica, in order for you to go on to a next level of education, you have to pay. I even
Yes.
recall
They have the common entrance.
Yes.
And
and our literacy rate in St. Kitts is one of the highest within the region.
yes.
Even within some Caribbean countries, children are not allowed to go to school up to they have to leave to help their family within their business and stuff of that nature. So we are very, very fortunate here to have education that is such a top level. When you look at the amount of children, of persons that have gone on to university over the past couple of years, even coming from the rural areas, is very amazing. That we have opened up a lot of the avenues for persons to be exposed to a very high level of education
Yes.
within St. Kitts and Nevis. And that is why we encourage parents to make sure that their children attend school, because we don't want no children to be left behind. We don't want no children to be left behind. We want everybody to have the same opportunity.
That is correct.
Whether it be academic or vocational, because some are not, academically inclined.
It's opportunities
But
for all.
opportunities must be available for all children to become successful and show
Yeah.
their full potential.
To accelerate their progress.
Yes.
Now, Mr. Connor, we were speaking before about reporting cases
Yes.
of when children, are not in wholesome
Yes.
situations. Now, there are some people who probably would like to report. However, they're afraid to come forward and report. That sort of a
Yes.
thing in our society. You're seen as probably people,
And persons want
oh,
to-
you're a snitch.
Want to report anonymously.
You're a rat.
And that is one of the avenues that we are currently working on.
You have an app?
We are actually working on. We have an app that have been. It's being developed. A reporting app where you can simply go to that app and download it for free, and you can report anonymously, or if you want to give your information of who you are. So we are looking in going to that avenue to ensure that cases that are to be reported are reported. But we also encourage persons to come into the department, or if not, they can always call our number 467 1311.
Yes.
And someone will definitely be there to take the information, and it can be done anonymously. So we are making sure that we moving with certain things to ensure that these matters are reported, and therefore we can get a handle or a grip on these situations. Not everything is perfect, but we do try our best with the resources that we have to ensure that we respond to all cases within a timely manner.
Now who would be mandated reporters?
Mandated reporters, I'm so glad that you speak about that, because within the law, these persons are basically outlined in the law, and it is a serious offense if persons know of these matters and do not report it. You have such as healthcare workers, welfare officers, education, law enforcement, and child care providers. and failing to report such, you can be convicted and fined of up to $5,000 or imprisonment for 3 months. So it is basically, if we do our investigation and find that these matters, this matter in particular, had come to the knowledge of these individuals and they did not report it is a criminal offense. And that is one of the things that we're going to be dealing with, in terms of that we're going to be going out to the different institutions and having lectures with them to let them know what their role and responsibilities are. And also we are presently finalizing the child protection policy,
Yes.
which give instructions to each institution that are required to report such, that they would know what the framework is in the reporting mechanism coming from their end. So we are trying to pin it down so that everyone within the framework would understand what their role and responsibilities are when it comes around to reporting these matters.
Right. You know, in some societies, for example, some Asian societies and so on, you have children who are involved in the sex industry.
Yes.
And of course, the parents send them out
Yes.
to solicit, to bring money to the home.
To the home.
I have heard, I don't have the evidence, but I've heard people talking that sometimes the parents, right here in St. Kitts and Nevis, are complicit with the, usually it's young girls,
Yes.
their children. They know that they're involved, they're children, but they're involved with adult men. But they bring home the
The
iPhone 7 and they bring home all kinds of things. And they don't ask them where you get it from. In fact, they probably will say, bring one for me too. And you know, that is something that is not good.
we have had cases of such. As I said, we have had cases of such in the past, and we have moved to have children removed from those homes, and we allow the police to do the investigation, and where the buck stops, where the chips fall, let it fall, and that is the approach that we have when it comes around to these matters. Our department, as I said, work closely with the Special Victims Unit to investigate these matters, and there are presently some matters that have presently been investigated. There are some matters that have been investigated and persons have been prosecuted of such.
Yes.
And we continue in our quest to see how best we can approach these matters and tackle them in the best way possible, because persons need to be held accountable. And when it comes around to parents engaging in these activities, we will say to them, if you know that these activities is going on, and we investigate such once it's reported or we get to know of such, we will pursue it to the full extent of the law.
Yeah. What do you do when, for example, a child under 18-year-old child gets pregnant? Or let me say now, because they are getting the disparity with the law. It's under 16 gets pregnant.
16.
What happens in that case?
Once the child he have become recognized that child have been pregnant and been proven that child have become impregnated.
That is rape. That is statutory rape.
That is unlawful carnal knowledge.
Yes, but we don't want to say what it is. FUCK. That's where it came from.
Where it came from. And our department, once it's reported to our department, we get the police involved right away. That is our thing. We get the police involved right away, and we start a joint investigation between both departments. And once we can prove such, or the police can prove such, then it goes through as a criminal offense, and whoever is found to that the evidence is pointing to, the police will do what they have to do. And
What if the mother says, "Look, I don't want to proceed with this case. I want to drop the charges. This fella has really been good to the family. He helps around the house, and sometimes he provides financial support and all of that sort of a thing. I don't want to."
The parent do not have a say, and the parent can actually be charged for in that manner, because they are aiding and abetting such. So they can actually be charged in a situation like that. So the police will have to pursue criminal charges against that parent, as long as the evidence can prove that they even know that it was happening. So our first and foremost job as a department is to have that child be placed in a secure environment, and then let the police do their job. That is how we do our investigation. That is how we proceed in these matters.
Okay. Now, if that child carries the pregnancy, 9 months, has the child, doesn't the child have a right to a father?
That is correct.
The very same person who would have been charged with statutory rape because they impregnated an underage girl, do you tell the child that, look, your father was involved in statutory rape, and so therefore you must have no affiliation with him?
No, that is not something that we do. Because at the end, even when you look at it, sometimes someone might be charged for unlawful carnal knowledge, and a juvenile get pregnant, and something they're not even the father of the child. Sometimes we do an investigation and find out there were more than one persons who have been involved with that child. So you find numerous persons being charged in that instance. If the child, as long as the child, is born,
yes,
it is, until when she's 18, she have a choice whether or not she want to involve the father. That is all right. But
what if both of them are juveniles?
and that's the whole thing about, because we have had situations as such. And what we do is try to work with both families to see how we can come to a more understandable situation. Because at the end of the day, they're both juveniles. It's not like someone is taking advantage of the next within the confines of the law. So we try our best to see how we can work with both families to come to a decision of how that child would be raised, who would be certain responsibilities, and how we can go about creating a safe and conducive environment for the upbringing of that child.
Okay. Now, Mr. Connor, we've had a situation in St. Kitts. From time to time it crops up. And where we have children, we see police bulletins.
Yes.
Children are reported missing. They've gone for a few days. Parents don't know where they are. And then they turn up again.
Yes.
We've had an unfortunate case where a young girl full of potential went missing, and when she was found,
Yes.
she was dead. Liana?
Yes, Liana.
Is her
It was
name.
Liana.
But we've had other cases of people you hear running away. I think it's higher among girls
Than male.
than it is among boys. And oftentimes people say, well, oh, they just went by their boyfriend, man, they soon will be back. but the question must be asked if adults are luring children into their homes and have them there for 2-3 days for God knows what, playing the rosary, you know, and then they come back home.
And it's a good thing you brought up that. Presently, we are looking at creating a program, well, not really a program, but an awareness mechanism, which have been called the Liana Project. Basically, it's the leveraging emergency assistance necessary now for the safe return of a child. So that is something that we have been discussing with different stakeholders, such as the different media houses, the different telecommunications, and even the cable, where once we realize that a child has been missing for a specific period, amount of time, then it would then send, the police or our department would then send such information to these different outlets, which would then put such on out there within the media. It is not something where you just press a button and it happens, but once we do our investigation and make sure we look at all avenues that that child probably have gone to, such as a friend, a family member, a teacher, and all of that, and we have narrowed it down to the fact that this child have been missing. No one have seen this child for a period amount of time, for a significant amount of time. Then that would be activated to alert persons that this child is missing, and this child have been, last seen wearing such and such and such. So we have approached the media houses, and they are very, very happy to come on board with this new initiative that we are moving into.
What does the law state, Mr. Connor, in terms of the reporting? How much time has to pass before this is really put out there in the media? Because usually when a child goes missing,
Yes.
those early hours of when a
Early
child
hours.
goes missing is very crucial, because most things happen in those early hours.
Yes.
And if you have to wait for 24 hours to 48 hours and all that sort of a thing to make a report, perhaps that child is already
Probably.
dead.
And that is what we said. That is why I said earlier that once the parent or whoever bring that to the attention of the department or the police, we automatically start an investigation to make sure that all different areas are looked at. Once we have looked at all different areas, if that is done within an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours, and we have basically nothing to go on, then we move to that other stage of making it an official report. It is basically based upon a case-by-case basis that can be activated without having to go to the specific time frame of which you have to report a missing person. Because within the first 3 hours of anyone going missing of any and all options are looked at, those are the most critical hours that something can happen to that individual. And the Liana story is a very, very telling of such. And even when we look at the situation with the young man in Nevis who went missing a couple of years ago, who still have not been found and was just officially pronounced dead, that is another case that should bring us of such to bring this to make it a precedence of that we need to take these situations very carefully, very seriously, because we have a tendency, as you said, to say, oh, she gone by she boyfriend, she gone by this, but what if that is not the case? So we need to be sensitive with these situations as a society and stop looking at it and putting the information out there whenever an individual, because you don't know what is the situation that is going on with this child. Probably they have gone somewhere and committed suicide, who knows? And
Yes.
these are things that we really, really need to look at and start moving towards.
Right. Mr. Connor, I can't recall the name of the person or whatever, but there was a case I know that was recurring of a child who was running away. She ran away more than one time.
Yes.
And I asked the question. She ran away once. She went back to the home. She ran away a second time. She goes back to the home. She runs away a third time. What is that saying to the department?
And that is the thing about it. The department have been involved in that matter over a period of time. And this is, and we have been putting systems in place. We have been looked at that matter very, very deeply. And we had put systems in place to supervise, ensure, monitor that. But it boils down at the end of the day to the mindset of that child and of that individual that we're working with. So we did a lot of in regards to that matter, counseling, everything of that.
Yeah,
nature.
because people used to say, "Oh, is she again?" Everybody
Yes,
know what that is all
and
about.
that is the whole thing about it. And sometimes people don't even know what the true story about it because they see it again and again and again. But as I say, our department was fully involved in seeing how we can deal with that situation, along with the police to bring a solution to that situation that was going on.
Mr. Connor, we are going to go to the phone lines for the rest of the time that we have left. And I'm sure there are people who want to call in. The numbers to call, the local number 465-2555. That's the local number. And the overseas number is 1-718-577-2916. That's 1-718-577-2916. We welcome your calls. Working for you, good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon, Lesroy.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, and good afternoon, Mr. Connor. Wonderful program.
Yes, good afternoon, sir.
Thanks for that education. Now, there's so many things that you all have spoken about. And let me start this way first. Picnic don't bring parents. Parents bring picnic. And when a child is over 1 year old, heading up to 2, the parents are supposed to take full control of teaching the child and guiding the child the right way. But instead of that, like Mr. William mentioned earlier, girl, he cute, see? He can fight, see? He can come a bad man. So there is foolishness to be saying about the child. And a lot of that exists. And if they don't cut out that nonsense about telling the child, you can come a bad man, that child, that thing here, is sick down in the brains of the child. And the child will go with that because he hear the parents say that. And he would never stop doing wrong things what he is doing. Because he heard his mother say that. And the next thing again, there are a lot of big men doing wrong things to children, exposing the private. And when the child go and tell the child go and tell him, Mommy, Mr. Bonancy, show me his thing. The mother gonna tell you to watch me. You go ahead, go sit down and no chat that trouble in his ear. All of that, the child gonna say, well, I can't complain, anything go wrong to me, to my mother, and the child go with that. You know, and he feed on that and come bad. And the last thing, a lot of male teachers in the school them troubling the little girl them. As long as you see the child chest start to swell, they can't go interfere with the little girl them. So them the two is responsible for a lot of the children who are going wrong. Thanks for listening. I can't hear you because there's a cut out over here.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if Mr. Connor wants to respond, but we have to be a little bit careful when we start to say a lot. Working for you, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Williamson. Good afternoon, Mr. Connor.
Good afternoon, sir.
A great program, and it's always good to hear you. I know you're very proactive when it comes to the youth. A few things. One, I think the child unit at the police department have to be more proactive and respond much quicker when these complaints come in. That's number one. Number two, question. Do you guys have a 24-hour number that y'all can reach? If you cannot reach the police department, they can reach y'all within that period of time after working hours?
Yes, we presently do. Actually, once you contact the police department, also they would put you on to their special victims unit, who actually have a number for us that they can call. But our on-call phone number is actually 662-6833. It is manned 24 hours by a staff member of the department. Not within the building, but the officer will take that phone at home and stuff like that, so they'll be able to respond to whatever situation that someone is going to be reported.
Okay, thank you.
I'm glad
thank you.
that
But you realize that what I said in my opening statement,
yes,
that
definitely.
special branch unit, that unit there at the police department have to be more proactive. You cannot wait until 8 hours or 10 hours or 12 hours after a report to respond. And most of the time, when you give information at after working hours, you do not get any results, or you do not get a call back or something like that until the next day. And I think this that should change. It should be more. Someone should be able to be there 24 hours in that unit, making sure. Police officers are supposed to work 24 hours a day on shift, or however you want to put it, but there should be somebody in each unit to make sure that they can take a call for certain cases, and they should be able to monitor that system within that 24 hours so they can respond as quick as possible. Thanks much.
Yes, thank you very much, sir, for that suggestion.
Okay, Mr. Connor.
One of the things that I would like to even bring forward is that we just completed the
Children's Summit.
Yes, the Children's Summit at the Marriott. This was in regards to the signing of the Convention of the Rights of the Child by saying it's a nevis on the, well, it was ratified on the 24th of July. We was the first within the OECS and second in CARICOM to Belize. UNICEF selected us based upon that premise, so we had the Children's Summit to celebrate that achievement by the smallest federation within our hemisphere, to lead the way in regards to child rights and child protection. And I believe that we should always look to continue that trend. We had over 400 children who attended that summit. We had about 100 and something of persons of a delegation coming down from Nevis, and we had delegates from Montserrat, Antigua, and Anguilla, who came to be a part of that summit.
Just hold it there. We'll continue on that. Working for you. Good afternoon.
I'm asking Mr. Connor, is he sure? He said that when someone commits the offense of unlawful carnal knowledge, that they are arrested and prosecuted. I'm asking him if, since he's in that post, if he can tell the Federation if there was ever an arrest. And I said that to say this. I said they brought in this female from Jamaica, but I'm still to see the fruits of her labor, because we have children, we have girls getting children and go back to school, and nothing's being done. Yes, I know you can call people name on the radio and what's not, and tell us the victim name or the perpetrator name, but we the citizens are looking on, and we need some redress about that.
Yes, ma'am. I've been in the department now for 15 years, and as I mentioned earlier, we do work closely with the High Court with such offenses, and I have seen matters that I have worked with in relation to social inquiry reports of persons who have been convicted and even pleaded guilty to such offenses. I do not have the stats on me at this point in time, but there have been many cases of such unlawful carnal knowledge matters going before the court and convictions coming out of it. So, as you know, one of the biggest problems that we are facing And that is why it's so important to have reform, law reform when it comes around to these matters. That at the end of the day, that once the evidence is there and it can be proven as a witness statement, because that is one of the biggest things. What triggers an investigation is actually having a witness statement that something did happen from an individual, and this is what kind of hampers, because as you mentioned earlier, parents will tell their children, don't say nothing here, you want him to go to jail, then you can't feel, and these are actual things that do happen, but as long as there is no evidence of it, getting a conviction out of such is
right. You have to have someone who is willing to go to court and to testify.
Yes.
And that is where things break down, because then people don't want to do that.
People don't want to.
They will talk and there'll be a lot of chit chat and all kinds of things.
And the neighbors
but that said this and said that and all kinds of hearsay. But that does not count.
That does not count.
And you can't take that in the court.
Exactly. And that is where the problem lies with some of these matters. Not all of them, but some of these matters, because I know for a fact that there have been many convictions of individuals who have committed such offenses.
Right. Working for you, good afternoon.
Hey, thanks for taking my call again. And one more thing. That special unit for those children have to be very careful with who they got working in that unit. I'm speaking from experience. They got to be very careful, because they have people working that unit that goes into their computers and look and see exactly what's going on and bring it out to the public. They have to be very careful. You have to be careful who's working in those areas, especially when you're dealing with children and you're dealing with a computer and putting information into a computer. And that's all I will say for this afternoon. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you very much for your input, caller.
Working for you, good afternoon.
Yes, Mr. Williams, me again.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, we're hearing you.
Yeah. I know of a situation where a child was conceived, DNA was done, there was a positive father, and all the child went back to school, and all they said, well, my girl be here herself, hope you don't go back to school and get no more children.
Wow.
That's why I believe the ministry is saying. And the way he's saying the police, I am saying his department should have a better, to do more. Not that your department is supposed to investigate, and then when you see a crime, give it to the police. But I think you all sit back and say, well, the police do that, do you see?
No.
I'm of the opinion, Mr. Connor.
Okay.
I'm a retired police, and I look at it.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
And I'm not satisfied with your department.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm not satisfied with we call it FYE, or whatever we want to call it.
SVU.
We in the Federation citizens, we are annoyed the way they treat people, and the excuse they're making, they are flimsy in a statement. I thought the law was there to say that the children are a ward of the Federation, and the mother and the father and the body. You got to know how to get a statement. Especially when child born, you just say, yes, you came to court and said, on such and such date, this person come have a child, we did DNA, and she had called this name, and it matched that person. What else you want again? You want the person to say, and they went here and they went there? No. I'm saying you all need to do more. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. What I was saying is that
we did DNA, and she had called this name, and it matched that person. What else you want again? You want the person to say, and they went here and they went there? No. I'm saying you all need to do more.
Okay. Working for you, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, we're hearing you.
Yes, Mr. Connor, I heard you made a statement early in your remarks.
yes.
You said that we don't have a culture where 15-year-olds and so get married and so, but you should say you don't know of it. Because I know it happened.
Okay.
I know some young women, young girls, 14, 15 get married, and then when I talk to some older folks, they tell me yes, even in their time. And
Where
so
do they get married? Our law does not allow that. Where do they get married?
They're married. They were married. No, they had to have somebody, parents signing for them. So don't tell me, maybe that change now. But I telling you why not happen. So don't tell me no, I older than you all. Anyway.
Okay, Carl.
Okay, if the
Another thing,
person is not
hold
of
on.
age, do we still have that you can...
Let me finish the man. In the United States, they have child and family welfare. And once, like the police officer said a while ago, the retired police officer, once this thing happened that they got proof that this child was impregnated by an adult and underage, the child is the property of the state. So don't care what you do, you can't change that. He can come against you. Right? And they have a system set up there. Well, I could tell you about Florida, where they have special courts for that, and every week they have hearings in the capital there. Not the capital really, in Miami. The capital of the county. They have them in different counties and so. Well, lastly, a lot of these problems with children is because no father in the home. And we get into too many children born coming in the world out of wedlock. When a child has more than father in the home, from baby up to maybe 9, 10, the what they get instilled in them, they don't forget. And they oftentimes don't go wrong. Most of the time they stay within the bounds. And you allow the interaction, you allow them to talk to you, talk with them and make jokes, everything. And you ain't got a problem with them. But once a man got a child here, 1 hour, half a tree, 1 hour Tabernacle, one here, one there, one in Nevis, one in Anguilla. What kind of children they come in most of the cases? All they have to moment are to be commended because they played mother and father role. And they insist upon what the children should become. And some of them the children come to good, outstanding citizens. They're not always what I said. You got exceptions to the rule. Anyway, you need to have a part 2 and maybe a part 3 with this program.
Thank you. You've made some very valuable points. Thank you very much for your call. Working for you. Good afternoon.
That's why you hearing me?
We are hearing you, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. And good afternoon, Mr.
Sir.
Kano. That's why
Yes, John.
Valky is right, eh? Over in that department there for many, many years, they've been doing some bad things, some young people. These kind of offenses have to go to the court. We have a lot of nasty mother on the road doing bad things and mashing up the children in future. And we're not going to work in with that. That's why I want to say to Mr. Kano that we have a lot of people working like enforcement, come from overseas, young boys, interfering with a lot of young schoolgirls, them. And that ain't going to work with me, you know, in Sinket. That happened in the country. Right? That's a big thing in the country. They got lucky a man like Robert Bratcher around here, you know. They have to lucky a man like Bratcher around here. They got to done it the nonsense. You can't say go here, you know. Spanish doing that too. Some of them interfere with the young daughters and so on. And we're not going to tolerate that. And Mr. Connor don't come and say about no evidence there, you know. The evidence out there. Come deep in your tongue and go deep in your tongue, you hear it and see it. If I don't believe me, come and see me in the circus and there we go. And I want you to give me a number when you leave, that these things will get to the office. Have a good day, that's why. Working for you, working for
Yes, thank you very much, Carl.
Mr. Connor, a few years ago, I used to visit, I wouldn't say in which country, but as part of some sort of a church work, pastoral work, I used to visit a prison on a weekly basis. And I would have sessions with the prisoners. You know, sort of, you know, talk to them about self-esteem and different reform, basically. And I remember one of the prisoners saying to me, or in the group, that once it's 12 o'clock, it's lunchtime. And it took me a while before I try to understand what he was saying. What he was actually saying is that once the girl is 12 years old, it is lunchtime. And then I realize that he is only one of probably many who have this kind of a thinking. And you have older men preying on younger girls in our society. Whether they be bus drivers who are providing them with a free ride, but there's no such thing as a free ride. Or they're providing them with lunch money. It is happening.
Yes.
And the people who are calling in are saying it is happening, but it is not being policed enough. But you mentioned some good points too. At the end of the day, you have to have people to report it, and people who are willing to report it. And in order for these matters to go further, you have to have people who are willing to be witnesses.
Yes.
And sometimes that is where the bottom of the bucket falls out.
And
you see?
Yes.
Also, we have to be careful too, because sometimes we make generalizations, because you may have one or two people doing something, and then you say, all of them. Well, it's not all of them. That's a fallacy. We have to be careful with the generalizations, and we have to be careful by saying a lot when we don't really have any figure. But to say it is happening, yes.
Yes. And that is why it's so important to report matters. And I always say this, that we, along with SVU, have been working a lot on a lot of these sexual offenses. A lot. The assistant commissioner, Mr. Mitchell, we speak on a regular in regards to matters of such. We have a very good working relationship with the sergeant and the inspector within those units, and we work hand in hand, and we speak on a regular to get these matters going forward. And therefore we encourage persons to come forward, to make reports, to give information. And that is why we are trying our best to even bring this app on stream as soon as possible, that the information can come to us anonymously if need to. And our department we're seeking to enhance the department in relation to personnel, because at the end of the day, we need to realize that a department like such is very, very important to ensuring that these laws and these issues are addressed in a timely and efficient manner with resources that would bring great fruits coming out of this, and ensure that persons and children in our society are given the best possible chances for their development. And that is very, very important. So we need to really start looking at beefing up a lot of these departments with the resources and the manpower that are able to deal with a lot of these issues. As I did mention earlier, last year we had over 260 something cases reported, and the year before we had practically the same, and we have over 100 and something of cases that are collectively, not just of abuse and sexual offensive, but collectively. But that just to show you the magnitude of what our department have to deal with, and that goes to show that the resources need to be made available to engage, so that we can engage
in a small society as ours. 260 something cases, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
And you're only talking about the reported cases.
Yes.
What about those cases that are not reported?
reported?
Perhaps you have even more cases that are not reported.
And that is why it's so important to do shows like these, to bring the issues out to the public, and bring awareness, and to make sure that the society understands what their role and responsibilities are, and to give them a sense of comfort in that there are persons out there who understands what the issues are and are willing to tackle the issues with their support.
There's a lot of physical abuse
Yes.
that takes place with children. Some parents don't want to call it that, but when you're going to take an electric wire and beat your child,
That is.
when and everything you hit, the child has a bottle in its hand, the bottle drops. Whoop! Take it up. You thump that child because the child dropped the bottle. Take it up.
And when that
And
child,
sometimes I wonder, why? Why?
but when that child get older, that is what the same child will display, but to their own children, because that is the only means of discipline that they know. So
But where's all this anger coming from? The child drops a bottle. Why you have to thump that child, pick it up? Why? Is it that you're taking out some pent-up anger on the children? You are taking out your frustration on the children? Maybe the father is not supporting the child. And why are fathers, so many of them, over at the courthouse to pay for their child support? Why? It's a child's right to be supported. Why you have to end up over at the court?
and that is something that definitely need to be dealt with. When we look at the amount of persons that end up over there, it is very alarming. Also, you'll find that a lot of these issues end up in court because of fallout in relationships.
And the thing about it, there are some men, because they're no longer with the woman, they're not supporting the child. Well, who are you hurting?
Right.
When the elephants fight, the grass gets trampled. We're out of time, Mr. Connor. Is there anything that you want to say before we go?
Yes.
We'll just take this one call, this last call, and then we'll go.
Mr. Williams.
Working for you. Good afternoon.
Mr. Williams, me again. I was hoping that Mr. Connor would make mention about the inspector, the female inspector they brought from Jamaica. Because it seemed like here's Mr. Link, he's talking about his staff and the ACP. He's not mentioning the female. We brought in the female to direct our department. And to me, he's not using it. Another thing again, I'm not hearing him. He could have given statistics of how many female under 16 had children and the maternity ward, and then we know. And then we know how many cases he carried to court. Because when you got maternity ward now, you see children, you see people who is, must be 14 and all, the maternity ward now is for people under 16 years. And I want to know what are they doing about it. Thank you.
Mr. Connor, you answer quickly and then
Okay,
we'll have to
in
wrap up
relation
this
to
program.
the inspector over at SVU, I'm not too much aware of what her role and function is. You know, we work with SVU, yes, but we do not work we do not work with her in particular. She's a part of SVU. From my understanding, she is a what do you call it again? Advisor. She works in that capacity, from my understanding. So the person that we actually work with at SVU are the officers that are deeply involved in the investigations of those matters. So that is a relationship that we share with SVU. From my understanding, she's an advisor in regards to those matters. So she would advise those officers of how to proceed with certain matters in regards to that. In terms of the number of cases of teenagers that have been pregnant, I do not have the figures presently with me, but I believe from collectively over the years, from what I last look at, but I don't know exactly remember exactly going back to when. But what I can do, I can definitely get the figures to you, Mr. Williams, and we see where it goes.
It's high adolescent pregnancy rate.
But those figures are not readily available. But I know that they are figures, but I cannot remember from what date to what date are they from, and I would not want to give that information without knowing exactly
Sure.
what
Okay.
information.
Well, we can have another program, Mr.
Definitely.
Connor. You know, there's a lot of things that can be discussed.
Yes.
Mr. Connor, I want to thank you so much for coming on today's
Thank you very
program
much, Mr.
and to
Williams.
sharing, you know, with the public on the importance of protecting our children,
Yes.
rehabilitating our children, because our society depends on how we socialize our children. How children develop, how children grow, we will have a better society.
Yes, definitely.
Right.
And for the caller who made mention about it, a number, as I said, you can always call 467 1311, or you can always call 662 6833. Those are the numbers that we use in the department with regards to those reporting mechanism.
Right. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you to all of our callers to today's program, all of you who tuned in and who listened to our program today, speaking about the importance of how we protect our children. We had with us Mr. Gerald Connor, who is the acting director in the Department of Probation and Child Protection Services. Next week we will be back for another edition of Working for You. Until then, I am Les Roy Williams.
Working for you. A weekly talk radio program which highlights developments of national interest and the activities of your St. Kitts Nevis government. Join host Les Roy Williams as he presents news, views, reports, and interviews about everything regarding the activities of the Team Unity government and the building of our communities and the development of St. Kitts Nevis. Tune in and call in to interact with your government and share your views regarding the upward forward development of your community and our beautiful Twin Island Federation. Working for You is weekly, every Wednesday live from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. on ZIZ Radio, Win FM, and Sugar City FM with rebroadcast on participating stations. Working for You.